Hello again, gang. Wayne back. One last Excel video to talk about a couple of formatting things that I think will be helpful to discuss at this time. We will cover this week in this week's class again, as we'll probably review everything. But just to give you, those of you who are working at home, some additional clues. So, one of the things that I talked about was letting you know how to adjust the width of columns, like in this case, so that we can see all the content and do that automatically. I showed you in the first video that you could do it very simply by going up between the columns that you want to change. So up here, my cursor changes, and I can stretch the column any way I want. I can also do that with rows. So if I want to move or give more space to this word, I can come beneath 12 and 13 and stretch that down and give it some more space. So those are some options for me, but I wanted you to know that there are some quicker ways as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this column and shrink it down again. So I could come up here and drag it out as I've done. Also, if you just double click when you get that arrow as opposed to dragging, it will take it out, the column width out to the longest text. So if I just double click now, it's expanded that column to meet the longest text. So that's one way of doing that, and that you can do that with any single column. But what if you've got multiple columns that are, oops, well, that was actually quite helpful. What if you've got multiple columns that are too long? Like, let's say, for example, we had September was too short, and November was too short, and let's say December was a little tight, and let's also go back and change this one. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 columns that look like they could be a little bit wider to accommodate the text. So first things first. In the total column, you'll see a couple of my totals have changed to these pound symbols. Whenever you see that in Excel, that is just an indicator that the number is too large with the font to fit into the space. So you need to adjust it. So if I expanded that column, you'll see that number comes back. So don't panic if you see that. That's something you should be aware of. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of my cells. I'm going to come up here to the Format menu. We're still on the Home tab. I'm going to come back here to the Format menu over here. And under Format, I'm going to click that arrow. And I have a number of options. So I can manually set the height and width of any row or column. Or I can say Autofit column width, and it will auto-fit or change the width of all these columns all at once. So let me click that. And now it's moved all the columns out so that the widest text is accommodated in each column. And that's up on the Format menu here over on the right-hand side. That lets me format columns and ranges of cells. I will show you the column width option, which lets you punch in an actual number. So for example, if I wanted this to be a little bit wider anyway, I click column width. In this case, it's not a great example because I've selected more than one column. I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to choose one column, so this one here. Now if I choose column width, you'll see what happens is it's showing me what the current width is, which is 9.83. So I know it's 9.83 is the width of this entire column. So if that's close to being long enough for the rest of them, I could just come back in and say all of these, instead of making it a 9.83, let me make it really simple and just say column width 10, and now they're all 10. So I can set it explicitly or use the Autofit command up to me. And you can again do the same thing for rows. If I thought these rows were too small, I could click one of them, choose row height. It's going to tell me by default it's 16. I'm going to put a little bit of space all around these. So I'm going to choose all the rows now. I canceled that. And I'm going to say, except for my totals, I'm going to say format row height, and I'm going to make them all, let's say 18. It was 16 before, let's say 18. And now they've all stretched a little bit. And that's just for those rows I've selected. Okay, so that's a little bit on formatting columns and rows and getting them to be the right width and size. Um, in closing, I just want to remind you that if we want to select entire columns, we go to the top. Sometimes that's helpful, especially if I want to move a column or copy a column or insert a new column or select columns or do something with entire columns. If I want to select the rows, I come over to the far left and that lets me select different rows. And there'll be multiple reasons why we want to do that in the future. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to cover, so I'll leave that there, and we will continue this discussion during class this week. Save the document as usual. If you have a new document, obviously you'll see Save As, and see you Wednesday.